What's going on, people? Hi, it's Timmy and Joe, making videos about computers on the internet, and I'm sick. My throat hurts, but when I'm talking about how I'm sick, I got lozenges. I'm not actually talking physical. I am physically sick, like I have a cold. But what I'm more sick with is this damn video. What I'm more sick with is dual GPU cards, and it was supposed to be dual GPU card month, but here we go. Let's try this video again. We have two HD7990s in Quadfire. Quadfire. That's a bad word. Yeah, that's right. We got two 7990s, HD7990s, codename New Zealand, in the system. And after, like, honestly, about 5 days worth of pulling my hair out trying to get Quadfire to work in any meaningful way, I've decided that this is the video we're going to make. And, you know, after several takes, after several things, let's reshoot the whole thing. We'll do some explaining, and then we can get to it. But before we do that, I want to thank today's video sponsor, Deepcool, and the Gamer Storm brand with their Castle 360EX. It's actually in my GPU test bench right now, and I've always had a problem. You know it, I made a whole video on it, cooling the 7820X. X299 Skylake X processor, 8 cores, 16 threads, that's in that thing. The Castle 360EX, is the second generation of Castle, is by far the best AIO I have used to date. It keeps that processor at way under 90 degrees when any other cooler, during stressful, rendering and stuff like that, during Cinebench, during, testing, it would get up into the 90s and 100s and beyond. This is by far the best AIO out there. It's got an anti-leak bladder in the rad, which actually expands and contracts with the fluid as it changes temperature, makes it so we have, anti-leak technology built right into it. It's got an amazing pump, and it just looks good. It's got RGB on it. It's got this like little ring, you can take it out. It also has some pretty damn silent fans when they're working hard. They don't like make all kinds of noise like a lot of AIOs. So I just want to thank Deepcool and GamerStorm for sponsoring the video with their Castle EX360. And I'm going to need the money to pay for the counseling that I'm going to need after all of the pain and anguish I've suffered at the result of Quadfire. All right. Enough hilarity, let's get into it. So New Zealand, that's the code name for the architecture for the HD7990. It's just two 7970 Tahiti cores put together, so I don't know why they named it a completely different non-tropical island, but whatever. And they developed this as an answer to the GTX 690, which was a dual GPU card that AMD was like fighting NVIDIA for like a year later on. I don't really get why anyways. They had a 6990 before this, but they had to answer with another dual GPU card, and it was in April of 2013, and then it was in April of 2014 before they launched the next card we're going to look at after this, the 295 X2s over here. Not that they, you really see them because there's blocks on them and stuff like that. However, I do have a sort of example of what the actual 7990 looks like. Now the cooler is a little bit different, I figured out. It has like a squared off look here where if you can imagine a really long HD 7970 stock cooler, that's what this should look like if it was a 7990. But this is actually a FirePro S10000, and I want to thank David Scott for sending this over for me to have a look at. And it's a whole other beast. I'm going to have trouble because every time I've tried to load a Windows 10 driver for it, it just doesn't appear that they exist. So I'm going to have to go find some legacy drivers and probably load up Windows 7 to get this thing working properly, unfortunately. But it's actually sort of a cut down version of the 7990, but it's a FirePro, so it's a professional graphics card meant for rendering and stuff like that. Not really meant for gaming, but a cool oddity, in its own right. And I wanted to thank him for that. But I have actually Michael Ramsey to thank for all of the GPUs that you see on the table over here. We got two R9 295 X2s with blocks on them, as well as what's in the system there, two 7990s. So I actually did finally get Quadfire working, sort of. We'll see by the end of the video. I actually show an example of where it works. It's very hard to do this though, because drivers have gotten better, Windows has changed, but not for this card, not for the benefit of these cards, okay? And pretty much Quadfire support is dead. It was dropped off a long time ago, multi-GPU beyond 2 with the Vega series. And as of very recently, AMD is just not supporting multi-GPU at all, which is interesting. Okay, so when it comes down to it, I was hoping to just fire all these GPUs in here, get them working, and then I've got you saw there, the chiller is out as well. Because I thought, hell, I got so many quad GPUs here, I should be able to break some hardware bot records, because no one's put, 4 pots and LN2'd these cards, right? So it should be easy to break some Firestrike records or something like that. It should be pretty, no, unfortunately not. Firestrike in its current iteration just does not like this whole system. So to go back to the beginning, I was having a lot of trouble even getting Quadfire to activate at all. I could get Crossfire to work on one of the cards, so the 2 GPUs were working together, but I could never get utilization on all 4. I thought this was a driver issue, and I actually went all the way back to some really old drivers. And I had, you have to connect an actual, connector. There's one connected on here. I had one on there that I thought was working, and it turned out that that was actually the problem, I'm pretty sure, because I have got all 4 GPUs talking to each other with the current drivers, with modern Windows. I even went as far as to put Windows from my USB key and turn all updates off and actually install a brand new revision of Windows, because there's been a lot of updates recently, and then put some old drivers on it with bare installation and kind of work my way backwards from there. But that wasn't working either. Just turned out I needed to switch one of these up, and it works with the modern drivers. But in doing so, I'll throw a Firestrike up while it's running. You see there, the utilization on each GPU never really goes over 50%. It hovers around 30 to 50%, and it does this for pretty much anything you run, which basically makes it so the result of 4 of the GPUs working together is worse than just 2 of the GPUs working together. So therefore putting that much power into your system. These are 300 and some watt cards all on their lonesome. I have a 1200 watt power supply running them here. It makes putting all of this together completely useless and worthless. And if you go back and try and find examples, I always go and look on YouTube and look at forums and stuff of people actually using these cards, and I try to find more recent stuff so I can get driver versions that work and stuff like that. You go all the way back to when these things launched to really find anyone doing any meaningful benchmarking or work on them. And even at the time, I found a lot of complaining of just even the single card, one HD7990, being a pain in the ass because the frame times were so bad with them. And AMD was really known for this at the time, that their drivers were just kind of crap for these dual GPU cards, and you got a lot of micro stutter while using them. So they got a really bad rap, even worse than, NVIDIA had kind of figured out their drivers a bit better. It took a long time. And then, this card was only out for a year before the 295X2 came out, so it really didn't get much love, and, it pretty much died as soon as that happened. And to find anyone doing anything meaningful in a video recently with these cards in more than, just a single card is impossible. All I could find was some people playing Crysis 3, which, as we'll see by the end of the video, is pretty much all these cards are good for. At least in Quadfire. So, it's no fun. All right, so what would the video be without benchmarks? Well, I won't leave you disappointed here. I actually ran single card dual GPU benchmarks versus actual single GPU benchmarks, so we can see in 5 titles here, not even very modern ones, because if you go and look at anything launched in the last year, absolutely nothing has Crossfire or SLI support. So, and then if you go on the NVIDIA side, at least they have some tools, the NVIDIA Profile Inspector, that you can get games working, but there isn't, as far as I've found anyways, a real way to do that with the AMD cards. So it's even worse off for Crossfire, unfortunately. So what I did was I ran, a single card with 2 GPUs running, and here, we'll fire this up on the screen right now. So as we see, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, when it was working, because it crashed quite frequently, we saw some pretty decent scaling. However, it was inevitable no matter what happened, even with just one card using 2 GPUs running, that something would crash halfway through the benchmark. So I basically got 5 minutes at most before it crashed out of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This might have something to do with my configuration or whatever, but I don't know. It just wasn't working well. But the scaling was there. Actually, Shadow of the Tomb Raider in DirectX 12 mode, it does work pretty well. So then we move on to Sniper Elite 4, a well-known, AMD used this as an example back when the RX 480 was out, using them in Crossfire, how you could get some pretty damn close to, GTX 1080 Ti performance. And so it's well known for working well, and it, you see, has pretty damn good scaling. In fact, even the 1% lows, they're, an improvement by using the dual GPU solution here. And I think if you look at those single card, benchmarks, I don't think they're as good as what a 7970 would get. So you have this thing where you buy an expensive card with 2 GPUs, it doesn't work in barely any games anymore. Maybe back in the day it did, but you had frame time issues, and then when you only use 1 GPU on the card, it seems to have worse frame time performance than its equivalent with a single GPU would have. So it's kind of a raw deal, unfortunately. Load up Far Cry 5, and there was an improvement here, but the scaling in this game is absolutely horrendous. And we see that, both the GPUs aren't working very well together, and the usage on them is all sporadic and not really working great. And, but this game just doesn't really work well with this card at all. So, moving on to Deus Ex Mankind Divided, one of the better examples of this card working in Crossfire on the, 2 GPUs on 1 single card. And, it fares out fairly well. And then we move on to Crysis 3, which we will see one more time before the end of the video. And we see that Crysis 3 fares out very well when it was always known to be, the example, the benchmark, the mainstay for dual GPU or, more than, 1 GPU working in SLI or Crossfire. It usually did pretty well, and it's an AMD sponsored title, so I bet a lot of work went into making sure this works. All right, so we have kind of something to show on the screen there. So we got some benchmarks out, but the performance on that was all at 1080p. So unfortunately, it's not looking so hot, for even the 7970 these days. I believe a 7970 on its own would have better results than I just showed the single card. Something to do with just this card in general, unfortunately. But, I had to show something, and it kind of gives you an idea of where we could go from there. So now that we have that result, I just want to say I tried everything. I wanted so bad to chill these cards and go on Hardware Bot and, break some records. But the way the technology has evolved, I'm pretty sure I'd have to load up Windows 7, some old drivers on maybe an X99 platform at best, X79 maybe. I'd get 6 cores, maybe 8 cores at best to, benchmark this, because I tried to install Windows 7 on my EVGA X299 Dark. And it has a legacy mode for this, but it just doesn't work. I can't get it to ever, I get to a Windows install screen, but I can never get it to find my hard drives. And as far, I don't know, that's a whole separate video. I said I'd show you one example of it working. So come on over here. I actually got it to work in Crysis to actually show a measurable increase by using 4 GPUs together instead of just the 2. So come on this way.
A few moments later.
I'm not even joking. It's not working again. And I literally, this morning, saw GPU usage on every core. And then I left it on, never restarted it or anything. And then I go back in with the exact same session of Windows, and Crossfire's not working again. Give me a second. And every time I boot the card, every third time, blue screen on Windows load up. So usage, yes, we have usage on all the GPUs. All right, we see 30% usage on all this is not looking good, right? Well, last time I tried this, it took a minute for the usage to go up. So you see we're at 50 frames, 80, 100, there we go. We see 50% usage on some cores. We have a threat level here. Let's make it invisible and go like this. Boop. So we're at 49% usage on all the cards. We're seeing 109 frames a second, 85, 114, 120. We're getting up to 75 on all the cards. It's going up. It's going up. Here, we'll cap the frame rate. We're at 125 frames a second. This is looking better. Okay, I died. So we see here, it's actually sort of working. We're not getting 100% usage on all the cards, but we're getting, 70, 60 to 70%. That's a pretty good result when here, this is a video from just running the single card, and we see here that we've got both cards working at like 90%, but our frame rate was at 106 average. So I think it's working in Crisis. I think it is. 68 and 70, 80, 90. We see 90% usage. There we go. Our frame rate went up for a second, and now it's back down. This is abysmal. Oh my God. And without the sound on, I can't really tell. There we go. We killed that guy. Where's our frame rate at? 130 frames a second for a second there. That's real cool. So let's go ahead. Oh, the helicopter's shooting at me. Let's grab something that'll kill a helicopter. Kill this guy. Kill this helicopter. Throw a couple of bombs at it. There we go. Everyone's dead. So 117 frames a second. 100, and then it jumps down to 65, and then it's 80. This is terrible performance. What is the deal with this? Now, it's entirely possible that the performance that we're seeing has something to do with these cards not functioning properly. But in my testing, I tested both of them individually. They seem to perform somewhat right. Somewhere in the area of 100 frames a second in Crisis 3, you know, with one card, 2 GPUs working. So putting the 4 together, it doesn't work. Like, I mean, I showed you Fire Strike. It never got the usage above like 30 to 40% on each GPU, therefore never totaling more performance than just 2 of the GPUs working on one card. So the one thing I didn't try was going to Windows 7. That might have a chance, you know, of working better. I'm not sure. And I haven't yet tried Quadfire on the R9 295X2s. I have a feeling we're going to have a similar situation. I'm actually having a problem with one of those 295X2s even working right at all. It seems to be pretty bad for artifacting. So I don't even know if we'll get to even try Quadfire on those. But we will do at least one R9 295X2 versus a GTX Titan Z, because a really good friend of the channel, Jason Peruka, has procured one, a Titan Z, and it is the direct competitor, although it's probably much better, to the 295X2. So we'll be able to do some comparisons that way and actually fire off a video of meaningful results. I don't know what else to tell you. It appears as though Quadfire is just absolutely dead in these modern times, and at best you could load them up on some legacy systems, and maybe we'll try that at some point. But after I've been working on this video since last Wednesday, after like 5 solid work days of just trying to get meaningful results and chill them and this and that, like I even had, you know, a couple of these made so that I can, you know, insulate them to chill them down to sub-zero. Never got that far, because if you can't get it working, what's the point of chilling them, right? Like I chilled them down a few times just to see if I could overclock them. Overclocking them is just a big pain in the ass, because it doesn't tend, if you overclock the GPU and MSI Afterburner, it doesn't tend to do the same thing on both GPUs, unfortunately. It seems like the power limit on, you know, one will be set, and it's supposed to, you know, lock them to both. Anyways, I was having a hell of a time even overclocking them. And even at lower temperatures, they didn't go much more than like 100 megahertz on the core. The memory was, you know, a little bit better for that. We'll talk about it later. So I'm at WatchTimmy on Instagram and Twitter. I want to thank Deep Cool and their Castle, their box is up there behind my YouTube plaque, their Castle 360 EX. One of the best AIOs in the market. Thank them so much, because the money I get from that sponsorship will go directly towards my mental health. Just kidding. And I want to thank everyone who's donated stuff in this instance. We've got David Scott, we've got Michael Ramsey, I keep wanting to say Michael Scott, and Jason Peruka sending over a Titan. The wonderful community, I thank everyone who watches these videos. And the whole point of this video is that you should never try to Quadfire. It will blow up in your face, and you will end up with a cold, your sore throat, pulling your hair out, and you know, a bill for you know, therapy like this big. So I'll see you guys in another video. Thanks very much. See you guys soon.